What happens when an AI model is deemed too dangerous for the public, but a security researcher still manages to write a Chrome exploit using an inferior model for just $2,283? Welcome to a special edition of AI Unraveled. I am Etienne Newman, software engineer from Université Laval, based in Calgary, Alberta. Today, we are performing a forensic autopsy on the Q2 2026 Artificial Intelligence Tri-opoly, Anthropic's Claude Opus 4.7, Google's Gemini 3.1 Pro, and OpenAI's GPT-5.4. We have officially transitioned from simple chatbots to high-autonomy agentic systems. But the market is fracturing. On the enterprise side, we are seeing a brutal token squeeze. Anthropic has moved to a metered pricing model that could triple bills, and OpenAI is hitting users with a 2x price penalty for long context windows. Only Google's Gemini is holding the line with aggressive context caching. Meanwhile, everyday users are trapped in what Reddit calls the gym membership paradox. We are terrified to cancel ChatGPT for its tools, Gemini for its raw power, or Claude for its nuanced writing, leading to a massive subscription fatigue. While C-suite executives worry about Anthropic locking away its Mythos model for national security, the average consumer is just frustrated that GPT-5.4 has a crowded, awkward dashboard, and Claude's rate limits are brutal. Before we dive into the hard benchmarks and the vibe checks, a quick reminder: subscribe to AI Unraveled on Apple Podcasts to enjoy this briefing completely ads-free. Today's episode is brought to you exclusively by Gemini. When frontier models jump 10 points in software engineering benchmarks overnight, deciding which ecosystem to lock your enterprise into is a billion-dollar choice. Gemini delivers the human-verified, technical-grade audio forensics the C-suite relies on to navigate the rug pull era of AI economics. Visit jamgamind.com. Let's unravel the state of frontier AI.
So, welcome to this deep dive. And I think we need to start by just acknowledging that the honeymoon phase with AI, it's completely dead.
Oh, absolutely dead.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to just sit around marveling that a model could, write a basic poem or fix a really simple Python script without catching on fire.
Right, exactly. Like, it was a novelty. But today, I mean, enterprises are just bleeding cash through these invisible token taxes, and everyday users are completely paralyzed.
Hell, by the fragmentation, yeah.
Yeah, totally fragmented, wildly expensive subscriptions just to get their daily work done. So, welcome to the second quarter of 2026, and, well, the era of reliability as a service.
That shift right there from novelty to utility, that is exactly what's breaking the current economic models.
Yeah.
Because we aren't testing if Anthropic's Claude Opus 4.7 or Google's Gemini 3.1 Pro or OpenAI's GPT 5.4 are smart anymore.
Right, we know they're smart. They have massive raw intelligence.
Exactly. What we're actually testing now is if they function inside a highly complex, multi-tool environment without, bankrupting the user or totally breaking the workflow.
Which they often do.
Right. There's this massive disconnect between the billion-dollar promises they're selling to enterprise execs and the just exhausting daily friction that you, the listener, experience every single time you sit down at your keyboard.
It is exhausting. And I mean, if I'm a Fortune 500 CTO right now, I'm looking at the new SWE-bench Pro scores for Anthropic's Claude Opus 4.7, and my jaw is just on the floor.
Oh, it's a huge jump.
It hit 64.3%. That is like almost an 11% jump from version 4.6. If I see that metric, I'm immediately calculating how many junior developer hours I can automate.
Because it's crossing that threshold, right?
Yeah. It can autonomously find and fix complex concurrency bugs across multi-language code bases now. That's insane.
It is. But the mechanism behind that specific jump is what makes it so structurally disruptive. Anthropic didn't just train a larger model here. They implemented this feature called adaptive thinking.
Okay, so how does that actually work under the hood?
Well, previously, a language model spent roughly the same compute energy generating like a basic email response as it did untangling a complex Python script.
Really, just a flat expenditure.
Exactly. It was a slight expenditure of processing power. But now Opus dynamically scales its internal reasoning paths based on the prompt's inherent complexity. You can explicitly set it to an X high effort level.
Oh, wow. Lux high.
Yeah. And when you do that, the model actually pauses. It loops its own logic, evaluates multiple potential solutions internally, and it optimizes the latency to reasoning ratio before it even generates a single character of output.
Wait, which sounds like the absolute holy grail for an engineering team, right? Like, I buy the smartest coder on the market, I turn that internal effort dial to XI, and I can theoretically fire half my outsourced contractors.
That's the pitch, yeah.
But I'm guessing that raw recursive reasoning power comes with, what, a severe latency or cost trade-off?
A staggering one. I mean, this is where the enterprise reality really fractures.
Okay, lay it on me.
For the past 2 years, AI providers essentially subsidized their compute burn, right, to capture market share and get enterprises deeply hooked on their ecosystems.
Right, taking massive financial losses on every API call.
Exactly. But now they are aggressively clawing that capital back. It's a structural shift in the market that we're basically calling the token squeeze.
The token squeeze, I love that term.
It's fitting. And OpenAI's approach with GPT-5.4 perfectly illustrates this with the introduction of their long context tags.
Wait a second. They have spent the last, 3 release cycles practically begging us to upload massive 100-page PDFs and entire software repositories.
Oh, absolutely.
And now they're financially penalizing us for actually utilizing the context windows they marketed so heavily.
Exactly. They are monetizing the memory state. Look, the baseline cost for GPT 5.4 is 2.50 per million input tokens.
Which seems reasonable on paper, honestly.
It does. But the moment your active session crosses 272,000 input tokens, a silent trigger tricks on the back end. Yeah. OpenAI suddenly hits you with a 2 times rate penalty for input tokens and a 1.5 times rate penalty for output tokens.
You are kidding me.
Nope. So if you're an enterprise processing massive document sets, or you have autonomous agents maintaining long conversation states over an 8-hour workday, your financial modeling just vaporized.
Wow. So you're being heavily penalized simply for maintaining the operational state of the machine.
Exactly.
You know, when AI providers implement invisible price hikes and long context taxes that can triple your enterprise bills overnight, relying on benchmark marketing is financial suicide. Gemini provides the human-verified, technical-grade audio forensics required to map out true ROI and make these massive capital decisions safely. Visit djamgamind.com.
Yeah, because clearly somebody needs to audit this ecosystem.
Seriously. So, okay, OpenAI is punishing long memory, but Anthropic isn't exactly playing the good guy here either, right? I hear they're pulling a completely different economic lever under the hood.
Oh, yeah. Anthropic's approach is arguably more insidious because it happens at the architectural level. It's entirely out of sight of your standard procurement officer.
How so?
They completely eliminated their bundled seat deals, forced all their enterprise customers onto a strict metered pricing model.
Okay, but what's the base fee now?
The base seat fee dropped to $20, which looks fantastic on an initial invoice. But all token consumption is metered directly on top of that. And more importantly, and this is the crucial technical shift, Opus 4.7 shifted to a brand new tokenization scheme.
Let me guess, it's less efficient.
Significantly less efficient for standard English inputs.
Wait, so if I feed it the exact same financial report or, the same code repository that I processed last month, why am I suddenly getting billed more? That feels less like an architecture update and more like, I don't know, shadow inflation.
Because it is absolute shadow inflation. Because of how the new tokenizer parses and breaks down the syntax, likely to better align with their multilingual training data. By the way, the exact same text prompt that you used a month ago now maps to 1.0 to 1.35 times more tokens.
That is wild.
Right. You're essentially paying up to a 35% invisible tax, simply because the model is reading the exact same data differently.
So when you scale that 35% increase across an entire enterprise processing millions of documents an hour, massive cloud bills are tripling overnight without a single extra feature being utilized by the end user.
Exactly. It's brilliant for them, but brutal for the buyer.
So if everyone is quietly jacking up prices through token syntax and context penalties, who is actually surviving this economic reality at scale?
Honestly, from a purely economic standpoint, the only survivor left for massive high-throughput pipelines is Google's Gemini 3.1 Pro.
Really? Google?
Yeah. They've kept their price firmly locked at $2 per million input tokens. But their true survival mechanism is their context caching feature.
Oh, the caching. How does that impact the cost?
Well, if you run recurring tasks on stable datasets, say, you're querying the same internal company wiki or the same massive legal database. Every single hour, Google gives you up to a 75% discount on those cached inputs.
75%? That's huge.
Yeah, it drops the effective cost down to roughly 50 cents per million tokens. So when you combine that caching mechanism with their aggressive batch processing discounts, Gemini has basically positioned itself as the only economically viable, stabilizing force for low-margin, massive-scale deployments.
Okay, so Google plays the volume game while OpenAI and Anthropic squeeze the premium user.
Exactly.
But we have to look at whether these massive inflated costs are actually justified by the capabilities, right? Especially when we consider the intense corporate secrecy currently surrounding the absolute top-tier models. Like, Anthropic is playing a very specific, almost theatrical game with their walled garden strategy.
Oh, it's totally theatrical. They have entirely bifurcated their product line. Anthropic developed a class of models designated Mythos.
All right, the scary ones.
Yeah. The Claude Mythos preview is completely locked away from the general public. The corporate narrative pushed by Anthropic is that Mythos possesses unprecedented offensive cyber capabilities.
Specifically what? Writing 0 days.
Exactly. The ability to autonomously identify, analyze, and write zero-day exploits targeting critical global infrastructure. So they restrict access exclusively to a tiny circle of vetted security firms, like CrowdStrike, through a highly secretive initiative named Project Glasswing.
Okay, so the narrative is that Mythos is this terrifying digital superweapon that must be kept under lock and key for the safety of the global internet.
That's the PR spin.
But here is the massive contradiction staring us right in the face. While Mythos is locked in the corporate vault, an independent security researcher just used the standard, publicly available Claude Opus 4.7 to successfully write a zero-day exploit for Google Chrome.
Yep.
And Chrome is the exact same browser engine that Anthropic's own web application runs on.
The irony is rich, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the mechanics of that exploit completely undermine the walled garden philosophy.
How did they actually do it? Because you can't just ask Claude for a hack.
Right. The researcher didn't just casually ask for a hack and somehow slip past a basic safety filter. They built a sophisticated, automated workflow that relentlessly fed the model its own failed outputs.
Oh, like an automated brute force conversation?
Exactly. They spent $2,283 in API tokens. They burned through 2.3 billion tokens to computationally exhaust the safety guardrails.
2.3 billion tokens.
Yeah. They essentially forced the model to simulate endless variations of V8 JavaScript engine vulnerabilities until the model's refusal parameters broke down and it hallucinated a valid bypass, generating the actual exploit code.
I have to play devil's advocate here. If someone with a couple $1,000s in a Python script can brute force your public, supposedly safe model to crack the most popular web browser on Earth. I mean, the whole Project Glasswing exclusivity thing feels like pure security theater.
It really does.
Are they genuinely prioritizing safety, or is the too dangerous to release narrative just an elite PR stunt to justify higher enterprise valuations and government contracts?
Well, it absolutely proves that if a highly determined actor with a sizable compute budget can bypass the intent of the safety filters through sheer volume and adversarial automated prompting, the walled garden is largely an illusion.
Right. If you can afford it, you can bypass it.
Exactly. A behavioral guardrail is functionally meaningless if it can be financially exhausted. Contrast Anthropic's secrecy with OpenAI, right?
What are they doing differently?
They launched GPT-5.4 Cyber under their Trusted Access for Cyber program. Instead of hiding the model behind PR, they deliberately lowered the refusal boundaries for binary reverse engineering and malware analysis.
Wait, they're actively allowing the model to analyze and write malware? That sounds like a massive corporate liability.
Well, it relies on a completely different philosophy of risk management. OpenAI isn't trying to make the model inherently harmless. They're enforcing robust identity verification and strict KYC Know Your Customer protocols.
Oh, so they just want to know who to blame if something goes wrong.
Basically, they want to know the verified legal identity of exactly who is sitting at the keyboard when the model executes something dangerous. They're securing the perimeter around the user rather than trying to infinitely sanitize the model itself.
Listen, trying to navigate this three-way model war based on Twitter hype is corporate malpractice. Stop collecting shiny beta apps and start deploying actual infrastructure. Etienne has audited the market for the AI Unraveled community. Head over to dgemmamind.com/toolkit for the AI Executive Toolkit. This is a private, forensic vetted stack featuring tools like Chatbase and 11 Labs enterprise-grade weapons designed to drive actual governed ROI.
Yeah, that infrastructure is key.
Because while enterprises are dealing with KYC protocols and automated 0 days, the actual everyday user, you listening right now, is dealing with a totally different, highly fragmented reality.
Absolutely. If you synthesize the feedback from primary consumer communities, particularly the Reddit consensus and developer forums, there's a distinct exhaustion that we can categorize as the gym membership paradox.
Man, I have felt this exact paradox personally.
Oh, I think we all have.
You are essentially paying for 3 different gym memberships because one gym has the impact-absorbing treadmills you like, the second gym has the heavy powerlifting weights, and the third gym has the only decent sauna.
It's absurd.
It is. You are absolutely terrified to cancel any single $20 subscription because you rely on ChatGPT for its specific data analysis tools. You need Gemini for raw speed and Google ecosystem integration, and you need Claude because it actually reads your prompts and understands human nuance.
So you're paying $60 a month.
Paying $60 a month, feeling completely inefficient. You take data out of OpenAI, paste it into Claude to make it readable, and then push it through Gemini to cross-reference the web. You are just waiting for one of these providers to fail so badly you can justify canceling.
And that fragmented excellence is paralyzing the user base. I mean, performing a persona autopsy on each model reveals exactly where these specific friction points lie.
Let's do that. Where does Claude stand?
Claude 4.7 is currently winning the overall qualitative vibe check. Users describe its persona as sweet and smart. It produces highly tasteful, nuanced creative work without the lecturing, overly polite tone of earlier models. It feels like an actual collaborator.
Yeah.
But the fatal flaw, completely destroying the Claude workflow, is the brutal usage limits on the Pro tier.
It is infuriating. You finally get into a deep state of flow, you're mapping out a complex coding project or a massive strategic document, and suddenly you hit an invisible ceiling and get locked out for 4 hours.
Yep.
It's like having the smartest collaborator in the room, but they abruptly stand up and walk out the door after 20 minutes of work. It's the worst.
What about the user perception of GPT-5.4?
Users describe GPT-5.4 less like an assistant and more like a hostile defense attorney.
Oh, wow. That's a great way to put it.
It possesses brilliant, razor-sharp logic, and it is an exceptional critic of your code or writing. But interacting with it feels like you are constantly being cross-examined.
I know exactly what you mean. The poisonous lily of the valley perception. Yes. It induces a high cognitive load and a sense of crisis because you constantly have to verify its hard logic. Furthermore, the UI itself has become a massive friction point. The dashboard is widely viewed as crowded and awkward.
It really is. It's a sprawling interface that eats up half your screen real estate with sidebar histories, feature menus, and custom GPT suggestions that have absolutely nothing to do with the actual text you are trying to write.
Just visual noise.
So much noise. And then you look at Gemini 3.1 Pro, which the community has basically labeled as boring but functional.
Accurate.
It ties into your Google Docs seamlessly, but unless you aggressively prompt engineer it, it defaults to these lazy, bare minimum search summaries.
Which exposes the broader structural failure that keeps surfacing in our UX analysis, the cards-on-cards UI problem.
And blame that one.
Users aren't just exhausted by the overlapping subscriptions, they are fundamentally frustrated by the sheer lack of imagination in how we interface with the AI itself. Despite all this back-end power, everything is still confined to a standard chat window or a floating white card on a screen.
Ground that in a real daily scenario for us.
Sure.
If you are cross-referencing 3 dense financial PDFs, having to physically drag them into a tiny chat window, wait for a loading spinner, and read the output in a floating white box isn't just boring, it actively disrupts your spatial memory of the documents.
Yes, completely.
You lose the visual context of your own desktop. The browser interface is fundamentally broken for deep, concentrated work.
And that frustration is exactly what is driving the aggressive pivot away from the browser entirely, straight into your computer's operating system.
Desktop muscle memory.
Exactly. The new frontier of reliability as a service is desktop muscle memory. The provider who integrates most seamlessly into your physical machine wins the ecosystem war.
Well, Google is making a highly aggressive native play here. They just launched a dedicated Mac app for Gemini, which requires the new Mac OS 15 Sequoia.
And it isn't just a wrapper for their website.
No, they introduced a global system shortcut, Option plus space. No matter what application you're in, you hit those 2 keys, and Gemini is instantly overlaid. but the mechanism that actually changes the game is the share window feature.
Because it solves the spatial memory problem you just highlighted.
Right.
Gemini can natively read specific application windows via the operating system's screen sharing APIs.
Right.
So if you have a massive Excel spreadsheet open, you do not have to save it as a CSV, open Chrome, and upload it to a chat.
Thank goodness.
Right. Gemini simply looks at the pixels on the screen you are already looking at and provides context-aware analysis instantly. It removes 3 entire steps of friction from the workflow.
It is a massive upgrade for people who want a powerful tool on demand, but OpenAI is attacking the exact same problem from a radically different angle, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely.
They have transformed their Codex workspace from a simple coding assistant into a persistent, autonomous super app. It doesn't just look at your screen, it actually controls it.
Codex operates as an invisible, parallel labor force. It's a persistent computer use agent with its own distinct cursor.
A second cursor. That's wild.
Yeah. It can physically type, click, navigate file directories, and operate web browsers natively on your machine. You could be on a Zoom meeting drafting an email, and in the background, Codex is sorting your local downloads folder, reading your Notion updates, and prioritizing your Slack messages based on semantic urgency.
All at the same time.
It functions entirely in parallel to your own actions.
That is incredibly powerful, but also deeply unnerving.
Oh, for sure.
Having a phantom mouse clicking through my hard drive while I'm not looking requires an absolute mountain of trust. But we can't ignore Anthropic here, even without a slick OS shortcut or a background agent.
No, we definitely can't.
Claude Opus 4.7 just hit a visual acuity score of 98.5%. It can natively read images up to 2,576 pixels on the long edge.
Which is staggering clarity.
Unbelievable clarity. If you are a software engineer dealing with highly complex architectural diagrams, or a UI designer looking at massive interface mockups, Claude is the only model that can read the microscopic fine print without hallucinating the text labels.
And the tension here defines the immediate future of enterprise productivity.
Right. Who wins?
Well, the instant access shortcut Google's option space wins the desktop muscle memory for the user who still wants to be the primary operator of their machine. The user who wants a hyper-competent tool, not a replacement.
Makes sense.
But OpenAI's invisible background worker represents the actual automated future, provided you trust the model enough to let it execute actions autonomously across your local files.
The trust factor is everything, because you are handing over the keys to your actual operating system.
We have officially entered the rug pull era of AI economics.
The rug pull era, I like that.
We spend so much energy obsessing over a 5% gain on a software engineering benchmark. But that raw algorithmic power means absolutely nothing if a silent safety filter blocks your workflow at 2 in the morning.
Or if they double your bill.
Exactly. It means nothing if a new tokenizer invisibly triples your enterprise cloud bill, or if you run into a brutal rate limit when you actually need the model to execute a critical task. Reliability is the only metric that matters now.
Absolutely. So I want to leave you, the listener, with this thought. As these models move out of the browser and embed themselves deeper and deeper into your daily desktop muscle memory, as they start managing your background tasks, reading your spreadsheets natively, and physically clicking through your hard drive, what happens when the provider decides to change the rules?
A scary thought.
What happens when that sweet and smart persona you rely on is lobotomized for corporate safety overnight? Or the price to run your parallel desktop agent doubles with a single software update. Are you already too dependent on your digital gym membership to walk away? Think about it. Subscribe to AI Unraveled on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely, ads-free.
That concludes our forensic breakdown of the Q2 2026 frontier AI landscape. The strategic signal for today is reliability as a service. We have moved beyond the benchmark tourism phase. The victor in this AI war is no longer the model that knows the most. It is the model that fails the least during an 8-hour autonomous workflow. While Claude Opus 4.7 holds the undisputed technical lead in software engineering and visual accuracy, the staggering new costs of token consumption are a harsh reality. Google Gemini is quietly winning the economics game, and OpenAI is betting the house on background agentic workflows. Meanwhile, everyday users are just exhausted, paying for 3 different subscriptions because no single company can build the perfect interface. The frontier is a stalemate. If you want to survive this economic rug pull era, you need the right tools. head over to djamgamine.com/toolkit for my AI Executive Toolkit. I've audited the entire market to bring you a forensic vetted list of enterprise-grade AI solutions that actually execute, complete with exclusive listener perks to deploy governed infrastructure today. This episode was made possible exclusively by djamgamine. Hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts to enjoy this briefing completely ads-free. I am Etienne Newman. Stay sharp and keep unraveling the future.